This is January 8, 2018. This recording is titled Addendum to Abraham is Overrated. And these are three parts that I'd mentioned in the video titled Abraham is Overrated that I said was missing because I didn't have the book with me at the time. So I just want to throw these parts in, but just thought I'd make them into a separate video so the original video wouldn't be too much longer if I put it all in that first video. So Addendum to Abraham is Overrated. Now I'm gonna read from a book here titled The Pentateuch, Interpreter's Concise Commentary. And I think by the time I got to this part in my notes, I'd already mentioned that Abraham was Cushite as far as I've found, or at least was living among the Cushites or something, but it seems like he was Cushite to me. He is linked in history to the Assyrian, the Akkadian, and the Cushite, or the ancient Ethiopians. And I read from Genesis chapter 15, and I talked about how he was being told by the Most High that if he disconnects himself from his culture, from his family, from his land, from his people, and goes off on his own, then the Most High would make him the father of a nation, basically a great father of a great nation. And I was saying that seems a little bit strange, since the commandments, as I read to you in Exodus chapter 20, verse 12, is saying, honor thy father and thy mother. So they're saying, honor your parents. So for Abraham to just cut ties with his parents, so to speak, and go off on his own to do his new thing that's supposedly going to operate different from his fathers before, or from the Cushites that he came out of. It's like Israel just goes on now, once it's set up, to just operate like its own nation, its own thing, like it doesn't need anybody's history or anybody's past, really, except for the mention of them in a genealogy that, really needs to be looked at some more. But it just cuts ties with everybody before, and he just goes on to do his own thing and gets a full constitution, everything just set up just like a full-bodied nation when Israel starts up. So I want to read here now from this book, The Pentateuch, on page 31. Look at what it says here. I'll read a couple paragraphs, and I may or may not jump in between. These two traditions were united in literary form through the Joseph story, and theologically through the God of the fathers, who continually revealed himself. Okay, let me jump in here. Now, when you talk about the God of the fathers, usually when I was reading the Bible in the Christian church, which was mainly the New Testament, the God of the fathers meant the people from the Old Testament, of course, Noah, Abraham, those kind of people, but never usually Adam, because Adam deserves to be cursed, because he just can't possibly be saved, and he caused all the fall of mankind along with Eve, so and so. Adam, the first man who has ever had contact with the Creator according to the Bible, and the first man to have been made, and so on. He doesn't get any special place in all of this, but you got other people like Moses who will do whatever, and David who would, sleep with a man's wife and then kill that man, and so on. You get all these people who will get many more mentions in the scriptures, but Adam is the only one who can prove with his life that he's the first man to be created, because when he got here, he didn't see anybody else here. And two, he was the first and only man to talk with the Creator at a time when no one else was available to communicate with the Creator. So if you want to go back to the older original things and the song we used to sing, give me that old time religion, and you want to verify things, when you're trying to verify stuff, when you're studying, you're researching, you want a few different authors, and you want to get as much information as you can, and so on, and you try to balance things out and whatever. So to not have any serious information from Adam is actually threatening to the Bible or to the Torah. It puts the Torah in a place where I just don't I just don't like that part. You're going to tell me, well, it's because the Bible is really set up to talk about Israel, and Genesis, the starting book, is really just telling the build-up of how Israel was going to come together and so on. But for me, there can be no Israel without an Adam story. That just does not fly. You build up a lot on Abraham and on Moses, but you just can't tell what Adam was thinking, how he interpreted whatever the Creator said. How do you know that what is being builded later that was called Israel was being builded on what the Creator stood for and what the Creator communicated originally? I remember you're listening to a believer of Torah. So whoever wants to curse me, that's just your business. I only got one life. I got to tell it the way I feel it, the way I see it. All right, I believe in the book, but I got some serious questions and no one on earth has yet been able to answer them. And that's just the reality I have to live with. But I still want to ask the questions. So how do you know Abraham and others were walking the way that the Creator wanted them to walk if you never hear Adam go into detail about how the Creator told him that he should live? He gets one real main command only from this tree, and he can't keep it, and everything goes down. But did you hear him tell the other commands that the Creator said? You get a very complicated world. None of us could make this with all the creatures and the ecosystems and weather and everything just built in and flowing together. And you only get one command, that if this man breaks, and you never hear him talk about any other commands, as he has to move through this complicated setup called the world. Anyway, so this God of the fathers also, the Christian church would be like the early church fathers, who now I understand that's just complete garbage. But from the Torah perspective, God of the fathers might mean the patriarchs. But it says here, and this is a Torah commentary, not a commentary of the entire Bible, and like going to the New Testament to Revelation. So it's just the first 5 books of the Torah. So you would figure if someone's writing a commentary on the Torah, they are very knowledgeable of the Torah and probably have been studying it for many, many years. But this author says, when you deal with the God of the fathers, he is seen as a God who continually revealed himself. Abraham, therefore, who set out for the promised land, became the ideal man of faith and obedience, the type of the righteous man. So then, there was no type of a righteous man before Abraham, not even Enoch, who I mentioned in the other video, who walked with God and was not, because, obviously he was a righteous man. And does that mean Adam was not righteous? Like you do one sin, one transgression in your life, and what, nothing means anything anymore? Look at what David did and others, but So Abraham, though, seems to be the type of the righteous man. You see, this is a real setup for bringing in the Israel of the scriptures. But now, if you look here at the God of the fathers who continually reveal himself. Now, if you're going to throw away all the other people before that, and all the other people and fathers and so on and wise men who Abraham would have learned from in his life before he came to know this God of the Torah, they were very smart, very wise. They knew a lot of the secrets and mysteries of the earth and the skies, the heavens and so on, that people today are just trying to find out about. We don't know how they built this and that and how they did whatever. So these are the people that Abraham would have known in his time as being wise men and also spiritual men and great men who had a lot on their shoulders in terms of running this great Cushite empire with as many parts to it as they spread over different lands, taking over new territories and building up new societies, new communities and so on. This God of the fathers revealed himself continually. But as soon as Abraham comes into the picture, it seems like the revelation to the other people before Abraham doesn't really carry much weight. So we got to build on Abraham the Hebrew, as the Canaanites call him, because supposedly he crossed over. But if he is the God who continually revealed himself, he would have been saying some very important things and also things strategic to whatever Israel was going to become later on. or to whatever he was going to be doing with the world that he created. So since the creator then is not an idiot and everything he does is for a reason, he's got a great purpose and very meaningful, why is it that meaning can only be found beginning with Abraham, or for the most part so? Why does this God reveal himself to others before Abraham, but it's not a big deal to have details about all that? We're just going to start at Abraham. Why is it that meaning can only be found beginning with Abraham, or for the most part so? Why does this God reveal himself to others before Abraham, but it's not a big deal to have details about all that? We're just going to start at Abraham, when the creator would have only been spitting out, pardon me, a lot of jewels and gems and so on, and very spiritual and very strong things to people before Abraham came about. Let's go on reading. In Genesis 12, 1-9, Abraham's migration to Canaan. Abraham responds to the summons to make a complete break with his past. So this God who continually revealed himself, obviously, to people before Abraham and was continuing to do so with Abraham, that means that Abraham is now being told by this same God to make a break with his past, or a break with the other people who were getting revelations before Abraham came along. So the Most High, the Creator, gave lots of revelations to people before Abraham, but Abraham needs to break with all of those people who had all that revelation that is going to be building up to what Israel will be and what the earth will end up living through. So all that revelation before seems to be not that important, so why did the Creator bother give it if it doesn't have much meaning now when he's doing the next thing? The reason why he was continuing to give revelations because he's building up on what each person had. What each person got as a revelation from the Most High ended up bringing Abraham to this place. So Abraham breaks with his past so that he might become the founder of a nation in a land as yet unknown to him. The story suggests certain of the J author's religious conceptions, that mysterious J editor from the Torah. Abraham is the representative figure who truly apprehends the demand of the God of truth for absolute commitment. But I told you in the other recording, Abraham is overrated, that Enoch certainly understood and was committed to what the Creator said, and he walked with God according to those things that he understood from the Creator, and was not, for God took him. But they say Abraham is the one who should be in the limelight for all of this, because he had absolute commitment in the interest of future generations. All who respond to the divine imperative, as Abraham did, not as Enoch and Adam and all the others, all those who respond like this, like Abraham did, will bless themselves by him, by Abraham. That is, they will account Abraham as their spiritual father. Those who refuse the divine command will suffer the consequences. Now, as we see here, the different patriarchs and other people that came later on in the scriptures always learned from people before them. And it seems that we're supposed to understand that Abraham just didn't learn from anybody. He just met with God, and that was it. He had all the information he needed. He didn't have any wisdom, even though even Moses had to learn from the priest of Midian how to manage the people. So obviously there was some wisdom there. Now let's look here at Jeremiah chapter 6 and Verse 16, Thus saith the Most High, Stand ye in the ways and see, and ask for the old paths. Where is the good way? And walk therein, and ye shall find rest from your souls. So the scripture is telling us there that they were supposed to look for some old things behind them. So don't just go based on newness. Now look also at Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 7. Remember the days of old. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee, thy elders, and they will tell thee. Verse 8, When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. So, if this is Torah truth, then it should be truth at all times. Like the way I understand Torah, nothing is going to be untrue at any point in the Torah. That's how it's taught. And I guess I'm rereading the Bible, so by the time I get to the end of it, and after many more years, I will find out if that stands true or not. But you're taught when you're studying Torah, when you're learning it, that everything's going to be true. That would then also mean that since the Torah is a representation of the Creator or of His instructions, it's got to be true at all times. So if something is true about the Torah today, it would have to be true 5,000 years ago. It would have to be true in Noah's time or in Abraham's time, let's say. Now, if you're supposed to remember the days of old and consider years of many generations, ask your father. That means Abraham, this would have been true in Abraham's time as well, even if it wasn't written at that time. But the concept, the idea behind it would have been true, that Abraham would also have to start out on his journey remembering the fathers, the days of old, and of many generations. So he's not going to start out trying to make an Israel by the Most High's doing, I guess, and not have anything to do with his people behind him. So if there was no Israel at that time when he just left his father's house, the only fathers and the only people that he's going to learn from would have been who I'm finding out to be the Cushites. Because if you want to talk about Shemites, or whatever you want to call them, Semites or whatever, where is their greatness compared to the greatness of the Cushite that we're finding about and learning about in history and uncovering more things? The greatness of the people would have been what Abraham would have relied on, because if the Shemite did not yet create Israel by the Most High's doing, there is no example and no wisdom to build upon and draw from but that of the ancient Cushites. So then, if Abraham would have been leaning on the wisdom of his Cushite fathers to start out on his journey, then he would have been drawing on their wisdom, and that would have been significant. But you're going to tell me about the line of Shem started way back then and whatever. So, I don't know. I have to work through that. But like I said, I'm trying to find my way through all of this, because most of the teachings I'm finding is just teaching like about getting saved and salvation and so on. But only a few people are trying to massage the text, to see if anything else will come out of it in terms of verifying this. A lot of times when I see people trying to verify genealogy and so on, it's just to prove that Israel was black or the ancient peoples were black. Like, I'm trying to see if it's possible to prove at the level of a nation, or not just skin color, but at the level of a nation, whether Israel fits the place that the Torah says it fits or not. So he's supposed to rely on, but then the Torah is telling him to get up and leave and disconnect himself, when in this verse here it's also telling you to rely on your fathers. How can he rely on anybody in the line of Shem when they didn't create and do and accomplish as much as the Cushites did? Whites are trying to take over ancient Cushite history, the greatness of them, and the Egyptian history, which they're pretty much of the Hamites as well. Arabs have taken over Egyptian and Cushite history and their land and so on. And you get this little beanie, small little place there called the land of Israel that other whites have taken over. But where's the greatness and the glory of that compared to the glory of, let's say, Egypt or Cushite lands, territories, and monuments and so on that have spread all over the earth? The Hamites, you're talking about even the Olmec heads and the territories that they went to and everywhere. I mean, you're going to tell me, well, Shemites were in the mix as well, traveling with them and so on. But really, when you're reading history, you're finding that the glory of it all points to the actual Cushite who was of Ham. Like, can somebody tell me what I'm missing here, or should I just close this book and just keep reading the Torah to learn about when the next holy day is? So verse 8 is saying that when the Most High ask your fathers, and he links that to saying when the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance and separated the sons of Adam. So the Most High himself is speaking of the sons of Adam, and that nations came out of Adam. Out of Adam. So he's bigging up Adam right there, but we don't get to get much information about him. And he set the bound according to the number of the children of Israel, but he still singles out Adam right there, as if Adam is very pivotal, very crucial to every other nation that came on earth. So Adam is the root of all peoples, of all nations. As the Torah tells us, he made Adam and then he made Eve. So Adam is the root. Now we go to Table of Nations to try to figure out which nation is who and blah, blah, blah. Where's Adam's record of who he saw as nations coming out of him and where they were dwelling at the time or where they went and so on? This man does not get to speak. But all the other people who get to speak are like the patriarchs, who are going to basically tell you only things that relate to Israel. How can the book not tell you the rest of the stuff about what came out of Adam? So then it seems like the Torah or the Bible is just written in a way just to make you have faith. And that's a big problem today. Because so many people are having faith. Somebody can just teach you something and it sounds good, it moves you, it touches you, especially if you're going through a rough time in life or whatever. It just feels so warm in your heart until you believe. And they've got their own book, like I said before, to go with every religion in every country of the earth. You've got a religion, and a few of them make it to be mainstream religions. And they've all got their own books with them. And everybody is going to just believe according to what that book actually says. But all these books seem to me to be geared towards getting the listener to believe something. Which of these books are proving something in a way where you can say, now this moves beyond just the level of mere belief? You know what's missing from all of these books? More information. That's what's missing. Okay, for the next part, I'll read from... Okay, now I just did that. Oh. Okay, now page 36. Okay, no, sorry. Let me finish with page 31. The community of those who have accepted the divine summons must possess its own land and become a nation, in order both to preserve its identity and to give light to the nations of the world. Contrast the expectation of the tower builders of Genesis 11 verse 1 to 9 with the Tower of Babel. Abraham is therefore the type of the true Israelite, and Israel is to be the type of the true nation of God. I don't know, is it worth saying anything much about that? I don't know, let me run over to page 36. Looking at Genesis 14 verse 14 to 16, this writer is saying Abraham and his... let me just read it first, actually. Genesis chapter 14. Verse 14 to 16. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. When I first heard stuff like this in the Christian church as a boy, never told me Abraham was some warring person in general, and so I thought he was just in his holy garments, holy clothes, with a Bible in his hand all the time, or sitting in front of a scroll, and he just got up and went and fought to save his brother because his brother was in trouble. His Lot was in trouble, and he was protected by God, so he delivered Lot by God's power to make him fight. I didn't realize Abraham was some kind of a army man or something like that, but when you get older, you learn that the Bible doesn't speak as clearly. So as long as you just accept the Bible just on the basis of faith, you become somewhat of an idiot. So 300 he pursued them unto Dan and unto Dan. So I guess whoever, see, I didn't think of this before, but I guess whoever is putting Dan there is writing with knowledge of the tribes already set up, even though Jacob isn't even born yet with 12 sons. So somebody is looking at this and writing this story in a way that has you thinking of the tribe of Dan. So somebody is looking back. So if this information about Abraham's life was preserved all this time, why didn't anybody write it at that time so that it sounded current in Abraham's time, or just right after he died? Or why didn't they write it with the knowledge of the place, the name of the place? They're giving you all this updated information, which makes it more difficult as you study the Torah. Anyway, he pursued them unto Dan, which did not exist by that name at the time when Abraham was living, probably. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot, and his goods, and the women also, and the people. So it just seems kind of funny because you don't learn when you read the Torah that Abraham was some kind of a military leader, among the Cushites. But you can read outside material, outside to the scriptures, and learn that he was a Cushite general. So are we getting some kind of different picture here? I mean, you see what I'm trying to say? But he forsakes all of that and to go and try to start a nation, knowing that one nation is going to attack the next nation. So wouldn't Abraham have gone with his military skill and knowledge and power and so on? Like to go start a nation, and he doesn't, I don't know. But the book here says on page 36, Abraham and his trained men pursue the retreating, victorious kings of the vicinity of Dan. They rout them in the night attack, follow them on beyond Damascus, and rescue goods and captives, including Lot. The portrayal of Abraham as a military leader is in striking contrast to all other traditions recorded about him. You hear what this writer is saying? So it's like somebody is, that you just mentioned this quickly in the scriptures, like they're not trying to get you to see that Abraham was this mighty military leader, so that you can read the Bible and for decades not know this about Abraham. You just think that, just because they captured Lot, he just has to go and fight for him, because who else is going to help out his brother to get free? But that wasn't the case. The man was a military man. And Abraham would have normally traveled with hundreds of people. Like when he was getting up leaving his father's house, it's not like he just got up by himself and just left. He had a lot of servants and probably fighters with him, people that were with him, right? Probably hundreds. It probably would not have been uncommon for Abraham to travel with 300 people or so. Or with, what would in later times be called a legion among the Romans, right? So Abraham would have had a few hundred people with him when he's traveling and moving around. So this was no single man just getting up and just walking, God says he's going to make me a nation. This was already a powerful man. And where would he have been traveling with such power from? From among the Cushites that he came out of, according to my views. Regarding Abraham's relationship to Jerusalem, we have only the Melchizedek story as evidence. The account is puzzling. Okay, maybe I'll stop right there. I won't bother. But there's some stuff I'm looking in there with Melchizedek. But it really, it kind of shows a little bit more information for sure. That somehow this Abraham, with all that we know of him, there is so much more that we do not know. So if you are not a very learned person, of course, learned people will have more information, far more than I, and will also be able to correct certain things in this recording and the other one I did before this. correct me on certain things, which, would definitely be helpful because I'm searching. I'm not going to be ashamed of anyone correcting me, because you cannot make me look like an idiot because you just want to put me down. I'm past that when it comes to this scripture. I'm past that now. I've lived long enough reading this Bible from when I was a small child, and now I'm just searching. And you can't offend me by correcting me, because even if you want to insult me, I'm just going to learn something from how you are correcting me. So I become better off. I become more knowledgeable, because I'm trying to piece together all kinds of information to learn what the scriptures really is saying to us as a whole. But at least if you are new to this stuff, like if you're sitting in the Christian church all the time and you don't really know much about the Old Testament, you just more go off the salvation in Jesus from the New Testament, then some of these things I've shared here, even about Abraham, would just be a little bit new information to you. That Abraham didn't just travel by himself. He would have had like a harem with him or something, like a whole lot of people, I should say, with him. And so it just comes a little bit different. So it just goes to show you that when the scriptures is telling you certain things, there's a whole lot of other backdrop to it that you never understand, and it gives, might I say, historical setting that may or may not change, and usually would change your understanding of the scriptures, of what happened right there at the time, depending on whatever verse or chapter you're reading. So it just goes to show, yeah, people really have to read and study. It's not just about regurgitating what you heard because you just came into this knowledge or you just joined a Christian church and so on. You got to read and study, read some more. Every chapter you read in the scriptures, even if it's New Testament, go and read from a couple authors on it, or at least one author, or if it's just a website you're reading, read a few pages from one website, a few from another website. Pick a few websites and read and learn some more so that you can get some better understanding and try to figure out what this Bible is about. And maybe you might find out what I'm searching for, who wrote this Bible, who these mysterious editors of the Torah are, JP and all of them. And if you ever find that out, please let me know, because I'm trying to find out if they're telling us the right thing about God.